And I wonder if, when we talk about liberal negative freedom, okay, of which you're fairly skeptical, right, the idea of liberal negative freedom, could that not simply entail a thinning of the public sector, a thinning of the state that then allows civil society to flourish, right? Intermediary institutions, churches, neighborhoods, communities, so that liberal freedom could constrain the state so that these healthy organs of civil society have greater sphere to operate. And then somewhat related to that, when you talk about the Methodist prayer and its invocation of joyful obedience, is that joyful obedience to whom? Presumably to God, right? But not joyful obedience to the state necessarily, right? So how do you see then, in your view, this relationship between how much sphere we give the state and what we in turn do to the agency in civil society?
Yeah, those are really good questions. I am critical of liberal negative freedom, but it's always better than fascism. So if your options are liberal negative freedom or fascism, choose liberal negative freedom. So I don't want us to set up inappropriate binaries. It's like if your options are capitalism or feudalism, choose capitalism. I mean, it's not like many of us haven't recognized the efficiency of the capitalist markets and the wealth they've produced. We just want to say the fact that they have produced this wealth means we can rethink how the next step. And we don't have to have some of those inequities. Is it the thinning of the state which allows for civil society, or I've done quite a bit of work lately on civil society. The one thing I would say is I would never place the church as a voluntary institution in civil society. The church is a transnational reality, which is not in any sense beholden to the state. I think civil society often is still bounded by the state. The state still, I mean, look at the state right now. It still, in some sense, even chooses, it makes the conditions for certain economic arrangements without always explicitly stating so. Ha-Joon Chang's essay, if you've read this little book, popular book, 24 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, where he goes through and shows where, in fact, it has been certain state regulations in China and other places which have allowed for the kind of flourishing, I think, is a very useful understanding of how the state and the civil society are still connected. Joyful obedience is to Jesus, not to the state. And that's why I'm an Augustinian. I think there are two citizenships people of faith must always take into account. And my fear, I mean, I'm quite serious that as a theologian I was popular in the 13th century, but now it's very controversial. It's hard for us to, I mean, we don't have a school like this. And that's partly because of the success of you economists and business people. Now, I blame Jevons, not Stanley Jevons, for the reason we don't talk. Right, because Stanley Jevons is the economist who said, forget political economy. Everything was political economy up to that time. And then Jevons says, no, it's a mathematical science. So he got rid of the political so that there's not this assumption that economics is a moral science. I really love that idea. I think it is. Keynes said that. Economics is a moral science. Hume, Smith, Mill, they were all moral philosophers. And what we've done is we've bracketed out that component. So, I mean, I don't know, but in theology, you have to read the history of your discipline to understand it. Do economists read the history of their discipline?
Not much, yeah.
Yeah, I've not met many who did. But I do think the conversation is really important. So in that sense, one of my concerns about these two cities is not that I want to give allegiance to the state. No, not at all. But I do fear that commercial society, because that's what Hume and Smith said is the most important. That's why they were skeptical of the church. Commercial society has replaced almost everything as that which renders us intelligible. Not everything, because it couldn't do it, right? We still don't make decisions about our children based on being rational maximizers. I mean, my goodness, I had one child who's a theologian and one child who's an English major in college, and I subsidized their education. That wasn't rational. So, I mean, so there are many things about our lives that are free from commercial society. And commercial society has a place, but my fear is it wants it all.